The crystal chandelier sparkled above the dining table, casting long shadows across the polished surface like it was judging me. I sat in my usual spot, the one farthest from my father, who always sat at the head like a king. We were gathered for what my mother called a family emergency meeting. Her handwritten invitation had arrived the day before, written in elegant cursive. It looked like an invitation to a garden party, but I knew better. When my mother was concerned, it usually meant I had done something to embarrass the family. "Olivia, darling," she said as she fussed with a giant flower arrangement in the center of the table, "you could have dressed up a bit more. This is a serious meeting." I looked down at my outfit, black tailored pants and a crisp white shirt. Simple, yes, but expensive. In fact, it probably cost more than anything she was wearing, but they never noticed details like that, just like they never asked me what I really did for work. To them, my little online business was just a phase, a distraction, something cute and temporary. Then came Victoria, my older sister. She arrived like she was walking onto a fashion show runway, heels clicking, perfume cloud trailing behind her, expensive handbag swinging from her arm. She always looked like she was on a magazine cover. As the CFO of our father's company, she had become the golden child, ambitious, polished, proud, everything I wasn't, according to them. She slid into her seat, gave me a quick once-over, and smirked. "Still running that little Etsy shop?" she asked, not even trying to hide the sarcasm. "Selling crafts to bored housewives?" I didn't answer, just took a sip of water and smiled slightly. If only she knew about my meeting that morning with the Forbes editorial team, or the photo shoot I had scheduled for the next day. "Let's begin," my father said, his voice deep and stern like always. Years as the CEO of Harrison Financial Group had made him sound more like a judge than a parent. "We're here because we're worried about Olivia's situation." There it was, my situation. That's what they'd been calling my choice to leave a well-paying job and start my own company 4 years ago. Since then, they had taken turns offering advice I never asked for, making subtle insults, and constantly suggesting I get a real job again. "The family's reputation matters," my mother added, folding her hands like she was in church, "and this little phase of yours is starting to raise questions in our social circles." I thought about the documents sitting in my real office, the one they'd never seen, at the top of a tall glass building downtown. In 2 hours, those papers would be part of the biggest financial news story of the year. Victoria flipped her hair over one shoulder and said, "We've been patient. We were hoping you'd come to your senses, maybe even come work with the family. We found you a great opportunity." My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from Marcus, my co-founder. "All systems go. Press embargo lifts at 6 p.m. I looked at my watch. Just under 2 hours. "We've arranged something for you," my father said proudly, as if he were doing me a favor. "A junior analyst position. You'd start Monday. It's a good step back into the real world." I looked at him. This man had no idea who I had become, or what I'd built. He still saw me as the child who made scrapbooks and lemonade stands, not the woman who had just closed a billion-dollar tech deal. "Did you know Forbes is announcing its most powerful women list today?" I asked casually. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Of course, I've been on the shortlist several times." She hadn't, but no one in the room seemed to care. "Though I doubt that's relevant to your craft store," she added with a smirk. "Actually," my mom said, leaning forward, "people at the country club have started asking what you really do, and frankly, it's getting awkward. We've tried to stay vague, but it's becoming harder." I smiled to myself. They didn't know my company had quietly bought the country club last month, or that we also owned half the properties in their exclusive neighborhood. "What do you tell them?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Oh, you know," she said, flustered, "we say you're running something online. Tech something, marketing, Shopify? Financial technology solutions," I said calmly. "Shopify templates," Victoria said, correcting me like she was the authority. "Let's just call it what it is." Another buzz. Marcus again. "All major outlets ready. Your profile goes live at 6 p.m. sharp." "The point is," Dad interrupted, "this has gone on long enough. You're 32 now, Olivia. Time to join the real world." "The real world?" I asked softly, thinking of the investors backing us, the valuation that would be published later that evening, and the fact that I was about to become one of the youngest CEOs in fintech history. "Yes," Victoria said, "where success is measured in numbers, not social media likes." Then, as if on cue, Every phone in the room buzzed at once. Breaking news alerts. Historic fintech acquisition to be announced at 6 p.m. Largest in industry history. Victoria looked up from her phone, stunned. "What's this?" Dad asked, confused. "A shift," I said, "a very big one." "How would you even know that?" Victoria scoffed. "Unless you've started reading real business news again." I stood slowly and picked up my handbag. "I should head back to the office. We have a lot to do before the announcement." "We're not finished talking," Dad said sternly. "I think the world's about to do all the talking for me," I replied, walking toward the door. "Oh, and don't forget about the junior analyst job," Mom called after me. "They need an answer by tomorrow." I stopped at the doorway, turned slightly, and gave them one last smile. "Tell them I have to decline. I already have a job. I run the company making the announcement." Victoria stood up in shock. "You're what?" But I was already gone. The next hour flew by. In my real office, on the top floor of Genesis Tower, I reviewed final drafts with Marcus, made a few last-minute changes to the press release, and waited. "They really had no idea," Marcus said, shaking his head, "about any of this." I nodded. "They didn't want to see it." "Ready?" he asked, handing me a black folder with our company logo on it. I smiled. "Let's make history." At exactly 5:55 p.m., I stepped into the elevator. As we descended to the lobby, Marcus showed me a message from Victoria. Her text was panicked, something about Harrison Financial's stock price dropping unexpectedly. "Tell her to keep watching," I said. "The real fireworks haven't started." The elevator doors opened to a room full of reporters and cameras. A podium stood in the center, behind it a large screen that simply read, "Genesis Financial Technologies." I walked confidently to the front, my heart steady. Just as I reached the podium, my phone buzzed. A message from my father. "Looks like something major is happening. Let's talk about that analyst position again, maybe sooner than later." I put the phone away without replying. I looked out across the room, cameras flashing, microphones pointed at me. "Good evening," I began, smiling. "My name is Olivia Harrison, and I'm the founder and CEO of Genesis Financial Technologies." And just like that, the future began, with me in charge. The next chapter. I stood at the tall windows of my office, high above the city. The sun had just begun to set, turning the buildings gold. From here, I could see the top of Harrison Financial's headquarters, the same building where they once offered me a junior analyst job, the same place where my sister Victoria still believed she was in control of the financial world. "Send him up," I told Marcus, my right-hand man and co-founder. "And Marcus," I added, "bring me today's market analysis." He returned moments later, papers in hand and a knowing grin on his face. "Our stock's up 40% since the announcement," he said. "They're calling our AI platform the most innovative thing to hit banking in a decade." I nodded, my eyes scanning the numbers. It was surreal. Years of work, sacrifice, and being dismissed, all of it had led to this moment. "And Harrison Financial?" I asked, though I already knew. "Down 25% in 2 hours. They're scrambling." My phone buzzed. Only 5 people had access to that line. The screen lit up with the name, Elizabeth Chin, Editor-in-Chief, Forbes. "Olivia," she greeted me warmly. "The article goes live tomorrow. The Silent Revolution, How Olivia Harrison Built a Financial Empire While Her Family Wasn't Looking." Any final quote for the piece? I thought about the family meeting just hours ago, about every time they'd rolled their eyes at my little business, every condescending comment, every ignored moment of effort. "Yes," I said with quiet confidence. "Success doesn't need permission, it just needs patience." After the photo shoot wrapped, Marcus returned with more updates. 3 banks want to implement our AI immediately. 6 more are asking for meetings. The industry's shifting fast. He turned on a business news channel. "Your sister's giving interviews," he said, barely hiding a smirk, claiming this was all a family effort. On screen, Victoria stood outside Harrison Financial, her voice calm but her eyes giving her away. "Of course, we supported Olivia's project," she said, brushing her hair back. "Innovation is part of the Harrison legacy." I reached for the remote and turned the volume down. "Send her a cease and desist. No unauthorized statements about Genesis, or about me." "Already sent," Marcus replied. "Also, your mom's posted 7 times about her brilliant daughter who takes after her." I laughed softly. Amazing how quickly crafts turns into visionary when there's a billion-dollar company behind it. A knock at the door interrupted us. Miss Harrison, my assistant said, peeking in, your father is here, and he brought your grandfather. I blinked. That was unexpected. Send them up, I said. Marcus, bring me the Harrison financial acquisition proposal. Minutes later, the door opened. My father stepped inside, his usual authority dimmed. He looked tired, smaller in this office, but then Grandpa walked in, calm, observant, with the same slight smile I remembered from my childhood. The quiet one, he said, looking around the room, always watching. I figured you'd show them eventually. My father stared at him in surprise. You knew? Since she was 12, Grandpa said with a chuckle. She corrected my market model over breakfast, but you were too busy admiring Victoria's haircut to notice. I moved behind my desk, watching my father try to understand what was happening. Why didn't you tell us? He asked finally. Why hide all this? Hide? I raised my eyebrows. I didn't hide anything. I started a legal business. I filed every document. I used our family name. You just never thought to ask, because you assumed I wasn't worth asking about. The online shop? He asked slowly. I smiled. That was just a subsidiary, one branch of Genesis. It was a convenient disguise, something safe you could judge from a distance. Grandpa chuckled again. And now you own the country club they wouldn't let you join. What? Dad looked up sharply. It was part of our latest acquisition, I said simply, along with half the homes in your precious gated community. This could ruin us, Dad whispered. No, I replied, sliding a folder across the desk. This could save you, if you accept the offer. He opened it and scanned the proposal. A merger? You get to keep the Harrison financial name, some autonomy, but Genesis becomes the parent company. It's the only way forward. And if we refuse? I tapped a few keys, and our AI banking demo lit up the screen. Then you try to compete against this, against a company already 4 times your size, against a future you're not equipped for. Victoria won't accept this. She doesn't have to, I said evenly. Your 3 biggest clients signed with us today. The board won't have much choice. Grandpa leaned forward, quite a checkmate. I had a good teacher, I said with a smile. You always told me, the quiet ones see everything. Another knock. Marcus again. Stock's up another 15% in after hours. Harrison Financial has just been downgraded. I turned to my father. You have until morning. After that, the terms change. He stood slowly, then paused at the door. That analyst job was beneath you. It was then, it still is. The only difference is, now you finally see why. The morning after, the next morning dawned bright and crisp. The city buzzed with my name. The Forbes cover dropped at midnight. My face, calm and steady, in the same simple white shirt from yesterday. The headline read, The Silent Revolution, How a Daughter Built an Empire While Her Family Built Excuses. I arrived at Genesis Tower early, walking past the flashing cameras and microphones outside. In my office, Marcus had already laid out the morning briefing. Victoria's on CNBC, he said, pointing at the TV, claiming she mentored you in secret. I took a sip of my coffee, watching her desperate spin in silence. And the numbers? Genesis is up another 30% this morning, Harrison Financial, down 45%. Their board is meeting now to vote on the merger. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Darling, the country club is thrilled. I've been asked to join several charity boards. When can we do a family photo for the society pages? I smiled and deleted the message. Just then, Grandpa arrived, carrying a worn leather briefcase, the same one he used when teaching me finance at the kitchen table. I brought something, he said, laying out faded papers on my desk. It was my first market prediction model, age 12, where I'd predicted the 2008 crash months in advance. You kept this? Every project you ever wrote, the AI proposal from college, the startup plans, I knew you had it in you. He sat across from me. They're voting now, he said. I nodded, pulling up a live feed from Harrison Financial's boardroom. Victoria was on screen, her face tight with frustration, gesturing wildly, even without audio. I could read her lips. We can't let her win. My intercom buzzed. The vote is in. They've accepted. Merger approved. On your terms. Grandpa smiled. Well played. So, what now? Now, I said, pressing the intercom again. Send in the transition team. Marcus, begin integration. I leaned back in my chair, letting it sink in. The girl they had dismissed, overlooked, and misunderstood was now rewriting the very foundation of their world. And I hadn't changed to prove them wrong. I'd changed the world to prove I was right.